Hello and welcome. It's 5:30 p.m. India time or noon GMT. First up, news from Las Vegas, where the police say at least 50 people have died and more than 200 injured after a mass shooting in the U.S. U.S. President Donald Trump tweeted expressing his condolences over the killing, and I quote, "My warmest condolences and sympathies with the victims and families of the terrible Las Vegas shooting. God bless you," unquote. Investigators say it happened near the Mandalay Bay Casino Resort on Sunday night. Right now, the suspect has been shot dead. Police have identified the suspect as one Stephen Paddock. Police say Paddock fired shots from the 32nd floor of the hotel at a crowd gathered outside for a country music festival. Police believe they have found the woman, identified as one Marilou Danley, and the cars, a Hyundai and a Chrysler, involved in the shooting. It's being reported that Danley was the wife of the shooter. Many victims are now at a local hospital, several in a critical condition. Witnesses say the shooting happened on the last night of the Route 91 Harvest Festival, with top acts including Jason Aldean. The hotel is near the McCarran International Airport, which temporarily suspended flights because of the shooting. Nearby freeways are now back open. Police still do not have a motive just yet or have not released the victim's information. Investigators are not calling this a terror attack yet, and only a tweet from President Donald Trump. All right, joining me for more on this story is an Indian tourist in Las Vegas, Joginder Tuteja. Joginder, good to have you on WION. Describe to us what happened and what you saw when Stephen Paddock went shooting from the hotel in Las Vegas.
Hi, good evening. So we were at a cafe on a strip which was just around 2 blocks from the place where the shooting happened. Fortunately, we didn't hear any gunshots at that time, but suddenly we just saw some people running right on the street, which was at a crossing, and we were just instructed by the hotel authorities there and then to shift ourselves in a lobby. And the good thing is that both the hotel authorities, the cafe, as well as the mall authorities, they showed some good presence of mind. There was no real panic. Of course, there was some anxious movements, and there were some nervous moments for sure. And while we were escorted back in, we then stayed there for about 15-20 minutes. And from there, we were moved to the Planet Hollywood Hotel, where we spent about 30 to 45 minutes right there on the floor, where we just sat down. We were given some water and the refreshments by the authorities. And that was a good thing because that kind of calmed the nerves. And throughout, the guards were pretty receptive to this entire environment that had built there and then. And that calmed our nerves, and we were asked to just stay put till the police came back with some further instructions. That went on for about an hour. It was a nervous moment. We were all getting our instructions and the information only through the world of internet. And while we spent our time there, around 12:30, we went back on the strip. It was pretty much isolated at that time. There was nervous moments for sure. And we had to walk back to our hotel. We were at Venetian, which is about 3/4 of a mile from where the shooting happened. We continued to walk pretty briskly back to the hotel, and it was pretty nervous for sure. We reached back there about 12:30 to 1 o'clock in the morning. What we get from here is that the situation has been under the control. Of course, it has been nervous. The casinos, the hotels, the strip, they all are pretty much empty right now. It's pretty much vacant. It's not definitely the business as usual. And we are just waiting to see what really happens in the morning. But yeah, I have to acknowledge the authorities and the Las Vegas police for making sure that there wasn't any panic on the street.
Right. Joginder, I know it's been a long night for you and your family. It's 5:05 in the morning there. And I appreciate you joining us live here on WION. I'm sure people around the world will be waiting and watching to, hear from you about the incident there that happened last night. Appreciate you joining us. But, this is being described, Joginder, as the deadliest shooting in American history. At least 50 killed and more than 200 injured. Now, describe to us, if you will, Joginder, about what happened in the immediate aftermath of the shooting when this shooter, described as one Stephen Paddock, went shooting from with an automatic pistol or a weapon from the 32nd floor of the hotel.
Certainly, yeah, it was pretty nervous. As I said, for about 5 to 10 minutes when we were at the cafe, we saw people running right in front. So the strip was about 10 meters away from where we were sitting, and we were on the first floor terrace, and yeah, it was pretty nervous at that time. People were running, and at that point in time, thankfully we did not hear any gunshots at that point in time. But as I said, that since we were escorted back into the lobby on the back side of the hotel, so that made us feel really safe. But yeah, those 2 to 3 minutes when we were still trying to make our way back from the strip into the lobby, it was pretty nervous. The traffic had come to a standstill. There were no cars in the running at that point in time. I believe the police had escorted the entire area. But at that point in time, there were people definitely running on the street. In fact, right in front of us, there was a hotel. I'm unable to recollect the name. It was Bellagio or something. But police had come and escorted that area also. At that point in time, there were immediately, in about 10 minutes from then, there were choppers in the sky too. And the security out there was instructed not to let any people either come out of the malls or the shopping estates or step back in. As a matter of fact, even when we stepped back into our hotel, there was some frisking that happened, which is actually a good thing because that was for our security itself. So yeah, it was nervous mood for sure. I actually distinctly remember a man coming in because his wife, apparently, I don't really know if it's how much of that is actually factual, but she was really weeping and crying because she had seen the shooting right in front of her. So she was pretty nervous at that point in time. She didn't really want to head back into the strip. She wanted to stay right inside the mall and feel safe and secure. And her husband was trying to console her and trying to calm her nerves. But yeah, it was pretty nervous. And we had actually landed, me and my wife. She was on her 40th birthday. And we had landed just 2 hours back into this Las Vegas. It was around 8:30 that we had landed, and it was around 10:30 when this entire incident happened.
Right,
So, yeah,
and Joginder, thank you. Glad you and your wife are safe, but give us a sense of from your perspective, from your vantage. Did you, by any chance, come across any Indian nationals, any other Indian nationals who may have been at the scene of the incident where you were there last night? And have you picked up anything at all about whether any Indian nationals may have become a casualty in this shooting?
No, I believe there hasn't been any Indian casualty or not that I have heard of. But yes, there were about at least 4 Indians who had run from somewhere around the spot, and they were exchanging notes when we were at the lobby as well, when we were holed in right behind the restaurant where we were. So there were at least 4 Indians. But yeah, beyond that, no, I'm not really aware of any such incident that may have happened to the Indians.
All right, Joginder Tuteja, thank you so much for your inputs. That was an Indian tourist from Las Vegas who was joining us live here on WION, describing to us what happened last night, even as Stephen Paddock went shooting and claimed at least 50 lives and hurt more than 200 in what has been described as one of the deadliest shootings in American history. All right, joining me now is my senior colleague Padma Rao from the WION newsroom. Padma, in the last few minutes, we've heard from President Trump and the State Department. Now, both of their tweets do not describe or mention anything about this being a terrorist attack. What do you make of those tweets?
Yes, I mean, quite apart from, using some very dubious syntax as for saying, my warmest condolences. I don't think I've ever heard condolences being warm. And also blessing those who have already been tragically killed by this man. I mean, let's, leaving aside the flippancy, I think there are 2 factors one must take into consideration. It's very, very late at night, or rather very early in the morning. So perhaps the President and his team are waiting to make a more substantial statement tomorrow, or rather, later today. And the second thing is that I'm not surprised at all, because it seems to have become a habit across the world for dubbing only such incidents and such killings which happened at the hands of Islamist terror groups as terror attacks. Now, this is to, at least in my book, terror attack is anyone who is armed with a weapon. Whether he's mentally disturbed or not, that's irrelevant. But the fact is that he or she creates terror and attacks and kills innocent, unarmed human beings. That is an act of terror. And the reason for this, Ramesh, is quite obvious, because I think the President and his administration are very well aware of the fact that the gun laws of the United States are in desperate need of further making them more stringent, because as you know, there are about 10,000 people a year on an average who are killed by other people's guns, and there are about 20,000 who actually commit suicide with their own guns. So these are, dreadful figures. And for long, subsequent U.S. administrations have promised a tightening of gun laws, but they've always run into political problems, primarily political problems, because this is, the freedom to have a private possession, which is indeed a gun when you buy it, is firmly ensconced and fiercely protected. It's ensconced in the American Constitution and fiercely protected by law. So it's not that easy. Further, the last point I'd like to make is that there are roughly about 90 million firearms in circulation in the United States. Now, think about it, Ramesh. The only way that any government could deal with this is by actually buying out these weapons. They're expensive weapons, buying them from the owners and then destroying them, just like Australia did, in 1995. And that is going to cost billions of dollars, and I don't think the American administration's priority is there right now. But having said that, after this tragic killing of more than 50 people, I do hope that the administration takes a fresh look.
Indeed, and Padma, very quickly, is it time that America revisit the right to bear arms, which is enshrined, as you said, in the Constitution? Maybe time for a rethink?
Yes, that's exactly what I've been elaborating on. And as you earlier pointed out when we chatted earlier, there is an element which makes it a little different. There are many mentally disturbed people or deranged people who've been certified as such by doctors and psychiatrists who also have possession of guns. Now, this may well have been such a case. On the other hand, it may have not. It may have well been, we cannot rule out an Islamist state link either, because let's not forget the German pilot. I think it's very facile to assume that an Islamist, a terrorist belonging to an Islamist group would have an Islamic sounding name or be a brown-skinned person. That's not really necessary. We had a German pilot, if you remember, some years ago with a holiday airline who was radicalized by the ISIS and by other Islamist stuff he'd been reading on the web, and he actually crashed a plane with passengers on board. So it remains to be seen whether in this case there was any element of radicalization from the outside. If so, by what kinds of groups? Was it, a group? There are plenty of radical white groups as well in the United States, like the Ku Klux Klan, like others. Was it one of those groups, or was it indeed an Islamist group from somewhere in the Middle East, or was it perhaps someone who had paid him money, or was this man simply mentally deranged? Did he have a fight with his wife? Did he, did he lose it listening to a lot of music outside his hotel window? Though I find that hard to imagine if he was on the 32nd floor. Whatever it is, there was a trigger, there was an instigator, and this terrible tragedy took place. So I really hope that the United States administration doesn't pay lip service anymore to the reform of its gun laws and really gets down to business.
Absolutely. Indeed, you made a very valid point there, Padma. Indeed, it raises more questions than it answers. We leave it at that for the moment. Thank you for joining us. That was my senior colleague, Padma Rao, joining us from the WION newsroom.